Imagine for a moment a calm, still lake. And as you gaze upon its glassy surface, my voice will begin to paint a picture there for you. But tonight, the picture isn't of still water. It's of the opposite. It's a story about a place where the water is never, ever still. A place of constant motion, of immense power, where a single, steady light stands against the endless churning of the sea. We are heading to a place of profound solitude, to the very edge of the world, to tell the story of the women who kept the light. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this quiet stories, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you feel so moved, you can leave a comment with your city or town and the time for you right now. It is a quiet way of knowing we are all listening to the same silence together. Alright, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing, and together, let's allow the story to begin. The first thing you feel isn't the land, it's the spray. A cold, fine mist that tastes of salt-endangered deep water. You've been on this small, sturdy supply boat for what feels like an eternity, watching the mainland shrink to a faint, grey smudge on the horizon. Now, your destination rises from the waves ahead. It's not an island, not really. It's more like a jagged tooth of rock, a place the sea tried to swallow but couldn't quite manage. And on top of it, growing out of the stone itself, is the tower, your new home. The boat cock. There's nowhere for it to go. It bobs and sways in the churning water at the base of a crude stone jetty. The sailors, weathered men with squinting eyes, toss a rope to your father, the new keeper. He catches it with a practiced motion you don't yet possess. All right, he says, his voice nearly lost in the cries of the gulls that circle overhead. Their calls like mocking laughter. They seem to be judging your life choices, and frankly, you're starting to agree with them. You have to time your jump. From the heaving deck of the boat to the slippery, seaweed-slicked stones of the jetty. It's a terrifyingly wide gap. You take a breath and you leap. Your boots land with a wet slap on the rock, and for a moment, you feel the profound, dizzying difference between the rolling sea and the unyielding stone. This is the first choice you've made in your new life, the choice to land. Your father is already hauling a crate from the dory. The sailors are working quickly, efficiently. They want to be away from this place before the tide turns. There are barrels of oil, sacks of flour, crates of salted meat, and your small, precious wooden runk containing everything you own in the world. As the last of the supplies are piled onto the jetty, the sailors push off. They don't linger. They give a short wave, and then turn their focus back to the open water. Your last link to everything you have ever known, become a small speck, and then disappear completely. The silence it leaves behind is shocking. It's not true silence, of course. It's a wall of sound you've never experienced before. The low, constant sigh and grumble of the waves crashing against the rock, the mournful moan of the wind as it whips around the tower. It's a deep, elemental quiet. A quiet without people. This is it, your father says and gestures with his head towards the tower. It seems impossibly tall from down here, made of heavy, grey stone blocks that look as if they were carved by giants. A thick wooden door, weathered to a silver grey and studded with black iron, is set into its base. He turns a large, rusted key, and the door groans open into darkness. The welcome is a gust of cold, damp air that smells of salt, wet stone, and something faintly metallic like old rust. You step inside. Your world is no longer horizontal. It is vertical. Before you is a staircase, a spiral of stone steps winding up into the gloom. There are no paintings on the walls, no wallpaper, no comforts. The interior is just the raw, dressed granite of the tower's construction. It feels less like a home and more like the inside of a well. Each footstep you take echoes up and up into the darkness above. You follow your father, your hand trailing along the cold, curved wall, feeling the faint dampness that seems to live in the very bones of the stone. This is the moment it truly sinks in. Not just the isolation, but the scale of it. You are on a rock, in a tower, surrounded by an endless ocean. The supply boat won't be back for months, maybe longer if the weather is bad. Historians and psychologists still argue about the precise nature of lighthouse madness, debating whether the crushing loneliness was a sudden blow or a slow, creeping tide. But for you right now, standing at the bottom of this cold stone serpent of a staircase, you feel the first whisper of it. It's a feeling of being profoundly, terrifyingly small. Your life has been reduced to this single column of stone, and your duty, which you have yet to even properly learn, is somewhere at the very top in the sky. The climb begins. Each step is a deliberate act, lifting you out of the damp gloom of the base. Your hand slides along the cold, curving wall, the stone thick with a persistent moisture that seems to seep from the very air. The light from the open doorway behind you vanishes as you round the first turn of the spiral, and you are plunged into a dim twilight, punctuated only by the occasional small, deeply recessed window. These aren't windows for looking out of. They are more like slits in a fortress wall, letting in shivers of grey light but offering no real view. They only serve to remind you how thick the walls are that separate you from the world. Your father is a few steps ahead, his heavy boots echoing in the enclosed space. It's a sound you will come to know intimately, the sound of another human presence in a world built for one. You pass the first level, a space that is not for living. This is the ore room. Your father pauses, holding up a small lantern he lit at the entrance. In its flickering glow, you see large metal coals. The air is thick with the heavy, cloying smell of whale oil. If you're fortunate enough to be in a more modern tower, the sharper tang of kerosene. This is the tower's blood. It is cold down here by design. A fire in this room would be the end of everything. This place feels ancient, functional, and deeply serious. You continue up. The stone steps give way to iron, a tightly wound spiral that rings with every footfall. The air changes, losing some of its deep cellar dampness and gaining the faint, welcome scent of wood smoke. You emerge into the living quarters. It's not a series of rooms, but one single, round room wrapped around the central column of the staircase. This is your kitchen, your dining room, your parlor, your entire life that isn't sleeping or working. A small, black cast-iron stove is bolted near one wall, a precious source of warmth and cooked food. A simple wooden table and two chairs are also secured to the floor, a wise precaution you don't yet understand the necessity of. The outer wall is lined with built-in cupboards and a small counter, and on the other side of the room, two narrow bunks are built directly into an alcove in the wall, like shelves for sleeping on. There is no privacy. There are no corners to retreat to. The curved wall is a constant, oppressive presence, a reminder that you are living inside a cylinder. Architectural historians sometimes debate whether the perpetual curve and the spiraling motion of daily life had a tangible, psychological effect on keepers, subtly warping their perception of space and time. You just feel a bit dizzy. Everything is ruthlessly efficient. A hand pump in a small basin draws water from a system that collects rain. Every object has a hook, a latch, or a designated space. In a place this small, clutter isn't just messy, it's a hazard. Your worldly possessions, tucked away in that single wooden trunk, will have to find their own small corner in this compact world. Your father points upwards. The work is at the top, so you climb again. Up and up, the iron stairs feel endless. 137 steps. You count them. You will count them every day. You will count them when you're tired, when you're sick, when you're carrying a heavy bucket of oil. It is a strange piece of knowledge that will embed itself into your very bones, the precise number of steps from the floor to the light. Repetitive labor of this vertical commute is a fact of lighthouse life often glossed over in heroic tales. It was, quite simply, exhausting. Finally, you reach a small enclosed platform, the watch room. This is the antechamber to the heavens. It has larger windows, panes of thick, sturdy glass looking out in all directions. And for the first time, you see the view. It's terrifying. White-capped waves look like a restless, living skin stretched over something monstrous. The horizon is a sharp, clean line separating the grey of the sky. There is nothing else. No land, no other boats, just the vast, empty bowl of the world, and you suspended in the very center of it. The wind howls up here, a high, lonely whistle that you can feel as a vibration through the soles of your feet. Above you, a final short ladder leads through a hatch in the ceiling. That is the lantern room, the sacred space. The reason you are here. Your father looks at you, his expression unreadable in the dim light. The light, he says, is all that matters. Your entire world has been mapped out in the single, grueling ascent, a place for fuel, a place for living, and a place for watching. And now, at the very top of your spiral world, you are about to be introduced to its demanding, glittering god. You follow your father up the last few rungs of the iron ladder and push open the heavy metal hatch. You emerge into a room made almost entirely of glass. This is the lantern room, the crown of the tower. It's a space that feels both incredibly fragile and immensely powerful. The wind is a living presence up here, a constant, pressing force against the thick glass panes that encircle you. You feel as if you were standing inside a diamond, perched at the very edge of the sky. In the center of the room, dominating everything, is the lamp. It's not just a lamp, it's a machine. A complex, beautiful and intimidating assembly of brass, copper and glass. This is the lens, a magnificent Fresnel lens, named after its French inventor. You've never seen anything like it. It's not a single piece of glass, but a breathtaking beehive-like structure of concentric rings of prisms and lenses, all meticulously fitted together in a gleaming brass framework, a crystalline giant. Some of these lenses were so large and complex they were given names like jewels. The one in your tower might be a first-order lens, the most powerful kind, reserved for the most critical coastal lighthouses. Its purpose is to take the modest flame of a simple lamp and, through the pure magic of physics, magnify and focus it into a piercing beam of light that can be seen for 20 miles or more across the open sea. Your job, your father explains, is not just to light the lamp. Your job is to serve it. It is the demanding, silent heart of this tower, and its needs are absolute. He shows you the clockwork mechanism at its base, a system of weights and pulleys, wrought on like a giant grandfather clock, that must be wound by hand. This mechanism is what slowly rotates the entire massive lens assembly, giving the lighthouse its unique, flashing signature. Every lighthouse has a specific pattern of light, to flashes every 10 seconds, a long, slow pulse, a steady beam, a code that sailors read from the dark. Winding this mechanism is your first task. You watch as your father inserts a heavy crank and begins to turn, the sound of gears meshing echoing in the glass room. A heavy weight begins its slow, hours-long descent down a shaft that runs through the center of the tower. When it reaches the bottom, you, or he, will have to climb all the way back up here to wind it again, day and night. Then there is the light source itself. In the center of the crystalline beehive is a simple multi-wick oil lamp. It looks almost comically small compared to the grand structure that surrounds it. Your father shows you how to trim the wicks to the perfect height to produce a clean, bright, smokeless flame. Too high, and it will create so that clouds the precious lens. Too low, and the light will be weak, a pathetic glimmer instead of a life-saving beacon. You learn to mix fuel, to clean the lines, to polish the brass reflectors until they shine like gold. This is not a romantic task. It's grimy, smelly work. Your hands will soon be perpetually stained with oil and carbon. The ritual begins just before sunset. You will ascend the 137 steps. You will wind the clockwork. You will check the fuel. You will trim the wicks. You will light the lamp. Then, you will stand in the watchroom below for hours, monitoring the rotation, ensuring the flame burns steadily. You are not just a keeper, you are a Vestal Virgin tending a sacred flame. One of the strangest and least known pressures on keepers was the psychological weight of this responsibility. The knowledge that a single moment of carelessness, a poorly trimmed wick or a forgotten winding, could lead to a shipwreck and the loss of dozens, even hundreds of lives, was a constant, heavy companion. Your father lets you light it for the first time. You strike a match, the small hiss of it barely audible above the wind, and touch it to the central wick. The flame catches a small, yellow flower of light. He helps you carefully place the glass chimney over it, and suddenly the flame steadies, growing brighter, purer. Then, Together you watch as the clockwork begins its slow, silent turn. The massive lens glides around the lamp, and as the prisms align, a brilliant, white beam slices through the twilight, sweeping out across the darkening sea. It's a breathtaking moment. For all the grime and the labor, you have just created a star on Earth. You watch it circle, a silent, rhythmic pulse of light. 1, 2, 3, 4. It pulses again. This is the tower's heartbeat. And for as long as you live here, it will also be yours. Historians still debate the exact number of women who served as unofficial keepers, as their names were rarely recorded in the official logs, but their work was just as real, just as demanding. Standing here now, bathed in the rhythmic sweep of the beam, you understand. The light is not a job, it's a vow. Your first few weeks are a blur of routine, a crash course in the tower's metabolism. But as the initial shock of your new life begins to fade, you start to notice the world outside the glass. Not the human world, that is gone, but the vast living world of the sea and sky. You begin to learn its language, a subtle and powerful dialect spoken in wind and water. At first, the sea is just a single immense entity, a churning grey-blue expanse. But soon you start to see the details. You learn to distinguish the sound of the gentle, lapping waves of a calm day from the deep, percussive boom of a heavy groundswell that speaks of a distant storm. A storm that might not even reach you, but whose energy has traveled hundreds of miles to break upon your rock. You learn the different textures of the water surface, the glassy sheen of a dead calm morning, the cat's paws of a light breeze that seemed to dance across the water, the angry, white-flecked chop of a rising wind. You learn the sky. You learn that a high, thin veil of cirrus clouds, what the old sailors call mare's tails, often means a change in the weather is coming within a day. You learn to recognize the heavy, bruised purple underbelly of a squall line approaching from the horizon, a clear signal to double-check the storm shutters on the lower windows and make sure the emergency oil lamps are full. This isn't meteorology from a book. This is a deep, instinctual knowledge absorbed through constant, unfiltered observation. Your life, and the lives of the sailors you protect, depend on your ability to read these signs. The Lighthouse logbook, a thick, leather-bound volume, has columns for wind speed, wind direction, and sea state. At first, you just copy your father's entries. Wind, SW, 10 knots. Sea, moderate, but soon, you don't need his help. You can feel the shift in the wind's tone as it passes the lantern room. You can gauge its strength by the height of the spray it throws against the tower's base. One afternoon, your father points to the horizon. Look, he says. You see nothing but a faint, hazy line where the water meets the sky, the tide's turning. He explains that on a calm day, you can sometimes see a subtle, shimmering line on the water, the tide drip, where the outgoing and incoming currents meet. It's a sign that is invisible to a land dweller, but to a keeper, it's as clear as a line drawn on a map. You also learn the language of the non-human life around you. You learn the sharp, piercing cry of the terns as they dive for fish. You learn to recognize the sleek, dark heads of seals, which sometimes appear in the calmer waters on the leeward side of the rock. Their curious, dog-like faces peering up at the tower. They become your silent, swimming neighbors. There is a strange and wonderful cold knowledge you acquire about fog. Fog, you learn, is the keeper's truest enemy, even more so than a storm. A storm is loud and violent, but a ship can see the light through the rain. Fog is a silent, suffocating blanket that can swallow your 20-mile beam and reduce its power to a faint, useless glow. When the fog rolls in, a thick, disorienting whiteness that erases the horizon and muffles all sound, a new and exhausting duty begins. The foghorn. Some lighthouses had immense steam-powered horns, but many, especially older ones, had a massive bell or a hand-cranked horn. This meant hours of back-breaking work, a monotonous, repetitive task of creating a sound that you pray someone, somewhere can hear. One day, a thick bank of fog rolls in, and your father shows you how to operate the mechanism. It's a system of bellows and gears, and cranking it is like wrestling with a stubborn beast. For hours, you take turns, filling the world with a mournful, groaning blast every 2 minutes. The sound is deafening, right outside the tower walls. It vibrates through your bones, a physical assault that leaves your ears ringing and your muscles aching. You can't see a thing, not the water, not the sky, only a swirling grey void. Yet you keep cranking because you know that out in that void, a ship might be navigating by your sound alone. Historians still discuss the immense psychological strain this created. The keeper, blinded by the fog, had to simply trust that their unseen efforts were making a difference. For you, it's simpler. You crank the handle, you make the sound, and you hope. You are learning that your job is not just to create light, but to fight against the endless, shifting moods of the ocean itself. A peculiar and unspoken truth begins to settle into your daily reality, as clear and as constant as the horizon on a calm day. The official keeper of this lighthouse, the one whose name is in the lighthouse service logbook, the one who receives the modest government salary, is your father. He holds the title. He bears the official responsibility, but you are the keeper. This was an incredibly common, almost universal, arrangement in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The official records are filled with men's names, but the day-to-day, hour-to-hour reality of keeping the light was often the work of their wives and daughters. It wasn't a formal assignment. It was an inescapable fact of life in a two-person ecosystem. When your father is sick with a fever, shivering in his bunk, the 137 steps don't get any shorter. The clockwork mechanism doesn't wind itself. The wicks don't trim themselves. The light, with its insatiable, demanding heartbeat, still needs to be lit at sunset. So you do it. You haul the heavy buckets of oil up the winding stairs, your arms straining, your back aching. You learn to do it without spilling a drop, because oil is more precious than gold out here. You master the delicate art of trimming the wicks, your hands becoming as steady and precise as a surgeon's. You stand the long, lonely night watches, your eyes scanning the horizon for the distant lights of a ship, your ears tuned to the rhythm of the rotating length. Sometimes, your father must make the dangerous journey to the mainland for essential supplies or to report to the district office. He will wait for a perfect window of calm weather, a rare and precious gift, and row the small, sturdy dory across the miles of open water. The day he leaves, the rock feels twice as big and the tower twice as tall. And you are utterly, completely alone. The first time he's gone overnight, a profound and terrifying sense of responsibility settles over you. It's no longer a shared duty. It is yours alone. Every creak of the tower, every moan of the wind sounds different, more personal. You perform the evening ritual with a meticulous, almost fearful precision. You check and recheck everything. As you light the lamp and watch its powerful beam slice through the darkness, the light feels different. It feels like it is emanating from you, a projection of your own steadfastness out into the vast, indifferent darkness. This unofficial work was a strange paradox. For many women of that era, it was a position of immense, unheard of responsibility. You were, in effect, the master of a complex and vital piece of public infrastructure. You were a technician, a mechanic, a meteorologist, and a sentinel. Yet, in the eyes of the world, you were invisible. You didn't wear a uniform. 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 Some women, like the legendary Ida Lewis of Lime Rock Light in Rhode Island, eventually became famous for their heroism and were officially appointed as keepers in their own right. But for every Ida Lewis there were hundreds, perhaps thousands of women whose names are lost to history, whose tireless work was simply subsumed under their husbands or fathers. Historians still struggle to quantify the full extent of this shadow service, as the official records are so stubbornly silent on the matter. It's a quiet testament to the forgotten labor of women, a story written in soot and way loyal, not in ink. You don't think of it in such grand terms, of course. You simply do what needs to be done. You learn to mix a batch of whitewash to paint the tower, a constant battle against the corrosive salt spray. You learn to mend fishing nets, to patch a leak in the roof, to cook a decent meal out of salted fish and hardtack. You become resourceful, resilient, and deeply competent. Your hands, once soft, are now calloused and strong. You are no longer a visitor here. You have become part of the tower. as essential to its functioning as the stones it's built from. You may not be the official keeper, but as you stand your watch alone in the dead of night, with the wind howling outside and the great light turning silently above you, you know with absolute certainty who is keeping the flame. There is a ritual within the ritual, a duty more delicate and more demanding than any other. It is the cleaning of the lens. You cannot simply wipe it down with a cloth. The magnificent Fresnel lens, that beehive of glass and brass, is the soul of the tower, and it requires a form of worshipful maintenance. Twice a year, the entire apparatus is disassembled piece by glorious piece. But every single day, it must be polished. It must be polished. In the morning, after the lamp has been extinguished, its flame having guided ships safely through the darkness, your father, or more often now, you, will climb that final ladder into the lantern room armed not with rags and buckets, but with a special, almost ceremonial kit. It contains soft linen cloths, brushes made of fine, gentle hair, and a small container of rouge, a jeweler's polishing compound. You also carry your leather apron and, most importantly, a large white linen sheet. Before a single piece of glass is touched, you spread this sheet carefully over the lamp mechanism below the lens. This is to catch anything that might fall. A stray hair, a loose button, a tiny screw, because nothing can be allowed to compromise the intricate clockwork below. Then you put on the apron. Not to keep your clothes clean, but to cover them entirely. The buttons on your dress, any stray threads, even the dust from your clothes, are considered enemies of the lens. Some lighthouse regulations were so strict that keepers were forbidden from wearing their normal clothes while cleaning the lens, instead donning special lint-free linen smocks for the task. The polishing begins. Each prism, each curved section of glass, must be treated with the utmost care. You breathe on a small section of glass, creating a delicate bloom of condensation, and then you polish it with a soft linen cloth until it is perfectly, flawlessly transparent. You use the rouge for any stubborn spots of soot or grime that the night's burning might have left behind. It is slow, painstaking work. You move around the great lens, your body bent in an awkward posture, your focus narrowed to a single pane of glass. It's like polishing 1,000 tiny pieces of the sky, each one a window through which a sailor's hope must pass. You learn the peculiar geography of the lens. You know which prisms are the most difficult to reach, the ones that require you to stretch and contort your body. You know the unique sound the cloth makes when it glides over a perfectly clean surface. You are not just cleaning glass, you are ensuring the purity of the light itself. A single greasy fingerprint, a speck of dust, can refract the light in the wrong way, creating a blur or a weak spot in the beam that could, in the worst imaginable circumstances, make the light appear further away than it is, luring a ship to its doom. This isn't just housekeeping. It is a task of life and death importance. It's also, strangely, a moment of profound intimacy with the tower. In the quiet of the morning, with the sun just beginning to warm the glass of the lantern room, it's just you and the lens. The world outside disappears. There is only the feel of the soft cloth, the smell of the polishing compound, and the gradually emerging, impossible brilliance of the glass. You see your own reflection, distorted and multiplied in the countless curved surfaces. 100 versions of you, all focused on the same task. Historians and engineers have written volumes about the optical genius of Augustin Jean Fresnel, the inventor of this lens. They discuss its dioptric and catadic elements, its efficiency in harnessing light. But they rarely capture the human element, the sheer, tedious, unloving labor required to keep this scientific marvel functioning. There's a curious detail some old lighthouse logs mention, the fear of static electricity. Polishing the glass could build up a significant static charge, causing the linen cloths to cling and dust to fly onto the surface you just cleaned. It was a tiny, frustrating battle against the invisible forces of physics. As you finish the final prism, you stand back for a moment. The sun, now higher in the sky, streams into the lantern room and ignites the lens. It doesn't just shine, it explodes with light, throwing 1,000 tiny rainbows onto the curved walls. It is a silent, daily miracle. You have taken a dormant, soot-stained object and transformed it back into a vessel of pure light. You carefully fold your linen sheet, gather your tools, and descend the stairs, needing the great glass eye to gather its strength for the coming night. Your hands may be tired, but your work is done. You have polished the sky. It begins not as a sudden crash, but as a subtle shift in the tower's atmosphere. At first, you might not even notice it consciously. It's just a feeling. The familiar rhythm of your day, dictated by the sun and the lamp, starts to feel different. The silence between the crashing waves seems to stretch a little longer. The echo of your own footsteps on the iron stairs sounds unnervingly loud. You are feeling the first true pangs of deep solitude. This isn't the simple loneliness of missing friends or family. This is something more profound, more elemental. It's the sensation of being the only conscious mind in a world of stone, water, and wind. You start to talk to yourself, not just muttering under your breath, but holding full, articulate conversations. You'll discuss the weather with your reflection in the lantern room glass. You'll ask the cast iron stove if it thinks the fire will last until the next supply boat. At first it feels foolish, but soon it becomes a necessary comfort, a way to fill the crushing silence with the sound of a human voice. Even if it is only your own, you become acutely aware of sounds you never noticed before. The drip-drip of condensation running down the inside of the watchroom window. The faint, high-pitched squeak of a gear in the clockwork mechanism as it turns. The scuttling of a mouse in the storeroom. A sound that is both a nuisance and a strange, welcome sign of another living creature. These tiny sounds become magnified, taking on a huge significance in your quiet world. Your mind starts to play tricks on you. In the howl of the wind, you'll hear a faint snatch of music or a voice calling a name you barely remember. You'll catch a flicker of movement in your peripheral vision and turn quickly, only to find a new stimulus beginning to create its own. Psychologists who have studied the effects of long-term isolation in other contexts, like polar explorers or prisoners in solitary confinement, describe this exact phenomenon. In a desperate attempt to stay active, begins to project its own content onto the empty canvas of the world. There's a curious condition some keepers wrote about, a sort of sea daze, where they would stare at the endlessly repeating pattern of the waves for so long that they would enter a trance-like state, losing all track of time. You find yourself doing it, standing at the watchroom window, your gaze lost in the churning water, until the cold seeping through the glass brings you back to yourself, unsure if minutes or an hour has passed. Your dreams become incredibly vivid and strange. The world you left behind, the world of trees and crowds and dirt roads, returns to you at night with a startling, painful clarity. You'll dream of walking through a forest, the smell of damp earth so real you can almost taste it, only to wake up to the familiar, sterile scent of salt and stone. The contrast is a small, daily heartbreak. You become a ghost in your own home. You move through your routines with a practiced, silent efficiency. You are a phantom that polishes brass, a spectre that hauls oil, a spirit that climbs the endless stairs. The line between you and the tower begins to blur. Its coldness is your coldness. Its steadfastness is your isolation. Its isolation is your isolation. Historians and memoirists have often debated whether this profound solitude was a source of spiritual peace or a catalyst for madness. The truth you realize is that it's both. There are moments of sublime, breathtaking peace when you feel a sense of connection to the vast, powerful universe that you could never find in the crowded world of people. And there are moments of terrifying, heart-pounding loneliness when you feel as if you might simply dissolve into the wind and the spray, leaving nothing behind but a faint echo in an empty stone tower. You are learning that the greatest danger in this life is not the sea, but the vast, uncharted ocean of your own mind. You have learned the language of the water, its gentle whispers and moderate tones, but you have not yet heard its cream. That education begins on a grey afternoon when the sky looks bruised and the sea turns a strange, unsettling color, a murky, leaden green. Your father squints at the horizon, his face grim. "Batten down," he says, and the words hang in the air with a weight you haven't heard before. This is not a school. This is a gale. The preparation is a frantic, focused ballet of survival. You and he work together, moving with an unspoken understanding. You bring the small dory, your only connection to the outside world, up from the jetty, a Herculean task of hauling it up the rocks and securing it with thick ropes to iron rings set in the tower's foundation. You carry everything inside that can be carried: spare coils of rope, buckets, tools. The heavy wooden storm shutters on the lower living quarters are swung shut and bolted from the inside, plunging your small, round room into a premature twilight lit only by an oil lamp. The world outside disappears. You are now sealed inside your stone cylinder. The wind, which had been a steady moan, begins to rise in pitch, becoming a high, shrieking howl. It's a sound that seems to get inside your bones, a sound of pure, unrestrained fury. The tower, which has always felt as solid and as permanent as the rock it stands on, begins to betray a subtle tremor, a faint, deep vibration that you feel through the soles of your feet. Then comes the sea. The first great wave strikes the base of the tower not with a splash, but with a colossal, deafening boom. It's a sound like a cannon firing, a percussive shock that travels up the entire height of the structure. You stumble, grabbing the edge of the table for support. The oil lamp on the table flickers wildly. You look at your father, your eyes wide with a fear you are trying desperately to hide. He just gives you a grim, tight-lipped nod. This is what the tower was built for. But the word normal feels utterly absurd in this moment. Another wave hits, and another, each one a physical blow. It sounds as if a giant is outside, trying to hammer its way in. The noise is indescribable, a chaotic symphony of the wind's scream, the thunderous impact of the water, and a deep, grinding, groaning sound as thousands of tons of water surge around the rock and the foundation stones. The pressure changes. Your ears pop. The air in your small room feels thick, compressed. You learn a strange and terrifying piece of lighthouse physics. When a truly massive wave strikes the curved surface of the tower, it doesn't just stop. It wraps around and continues upwards, a solid wall of green water climbing the stone, sometimes reaching astonishing heights. You hear it now? A monstrous, scraping, hissing sound as the sea itself tries to climb the stairs. Water begins to force its way in through minuscule cracks around the window frames, not as a leak, but as a fine, powerful spray that mists the air with salt. The bolts on the storm shutters rattle and strain. For a moment, a terrifying image flashes through your mind, the wood splintering, the glass shattering, and the ocean pouring into your tiny sanctuary. Yet, through all of this chaos, there is the one unwavering duty: the light. The storm does not care that it is sunset. Sailors caught in this maelstrom are depending on your light now more than ever. So as the tower shudders and groans around you, you and your father begin the ascent. Climbing the iron stairs is a dizzying, frightening ordeal. With each impact of the waves, the whole staircase seems to lurch beneath your feet. You grip the iron handrail, your knuckles white, and haul yourself upwards, step by ringing step, into the heart of the storm. Historians often focus on the heroic rescues. But this, the simple, terrifying act of climbing a staircase in a gale to do your job, is a form of bravery that is rarely celebrated. You are not fighting the storm. You are ignoring it, and in its own quiet way, that is the most defiant act of all. You reach the watch room, and the fury of the storm intensifies tenfold. Down in the living quarters you were shielded by the thickest stone. Up here, closer to the sky, you are separated from the gale by only a few inches of thick, reinforced glass. The wind is a physical presence, pressing against the panes with a palpable force, making the thick glass creak and bow in its iron frames. The sound is no longer a howl. It is a solid, deafening roar, like standing next to a waterfall that has no beginning and no end. And then you see the waves. From this height, you can see the true scale of the sea's anger. These are not the choppy, white-capped waves of a normal windy day. These are mountainous swells, colossal, moving hills of dark water with crests of churning, spittery foam. They roll in from the horizon, one after another, an endless, terrifying army of water. You watch, mesmerized and horrified, as a wave strikes the base of the tower. For a split second, there's a concussive shudder that runs up the stone, and then an explosion of white water erupts upwards, climbing the full height of the tower. It smashes against the watchroom windows with the force of a solid object, and for a terrifying moment, your view is completely obliterated by a churning, white foam. It's like being inside a submerged vessel. Then the water recedes, streaming down the glass like a dirty waterfall, leaving the windows smeared with salt and sea froth. You feel a new sensation now. The tower is not just trembling, it is swaying. It's a slight, barely perceptible motion, a slow, rhythmic oscillation as the immense structure absorbs the impact of the waves and the pressure of the wind. The engineers who designed these towers knew this would happen. They designed it to have a small amount of give, a slight flexibility to prevent the stone from shuddering under the strain. Knowing this as a fact of engineering is one thing. Feeling it, in the dead of night, in the heart of a hurricane force gale, is another thing entirely. It feels like the tower is a giant bell that has just been struck, and you are trapped inside, feeling the long, slow, terrifying resonance. The light must be lit. You and your father climb the final ladder into the lantern room. The swaying is more pronounced up here, at the very top of the pendulum. You have to brace yourself as you move. The roar of the wind is absolute. It feels as if the glass dome might shatter at any moment and you will be swept away into the screaming blackness. But you go about your work with a focused calm. You wind the clockwork, you prime the lamp, you trim the wicks. A small island of control in a world of absolute chaos. As you light the lamp, the small, steady flame seems like a miracle, an act of impossible defiance against the storm. The great lens begins its slow, silent rotation, and the beam slices out into the maelstrom. It illuminates a terrifying, ghostly world. In the sweeping arc of the light, you catch glimpses of the chaos outside, monstrous, curling wave crests frozen for a split second, the air thick with flying spray that looks like a blizzard of salt. The light is not a comforting beacon tonight. It's a searchlight sweeping over a battlefield. There is a strange, and perhaps apocryphal, story told among keepers about a stone, thrown by a wave, was lodged in the outer gallery of a lighthouse, more than 100 feet above the sea. Whether it's true or not is debated by historians, but tonight, you believe it. You can feel the sheer, brutal power of the water, its ability to lift and throw things with an unimaginable force. You retreat to the watchroom, leaving the lamp to its solitary spinning duty. There is no question of sleeping. You and your father will sit on the floor, your backs against the solid inner wall, and wait for the storm to break. You don't speak. There's nothing to say, and you'd have to shout to be heard anyway. You just sit, feeling the tower sway, listening to the thunder of the waves, and watching the steady, silent sweep of your light. You are a prisoner in a shaking bell, a tiny, fragile human heart beating in a body of stone, and your only weapon against the fury of the entire ocean is a single, stubborn flame. After the storm, an almost holy quiet descends. The wind drops to a whisper. The sea comes to a gentle, rhythmic sigh, exhausted from its own fury. The silence in your ears is as profound as the noise was. In the pale morning light, you unbolt the storm shutters and step outside onto the rocks. The air is scoured clean, sharp with the smell of salt and ozone. The world looks newly washed. But the calm is deceptive. The storm has left its mark. A section of the heavy stone blocks torn away. The dory, despite being secured, has been battered, a long crack visible in its hull. More importantly, the storm has consumed your resources. The constant, high flame needed to pierce the driving rain burns through oil at an alarming rate. Your supply of fresh water might be contaminated with salt spray, and a quick look in the larder confirms your fears. Several sacks of flour, stored near a wall that took the brunt of the assault, are damp and beginning to spoil. This is the slow, grinding anxiety that follows the heart-pounding terror of the storm. Survival here is a simple, brutal equation of resources against time. And your most critical variable in that equation is the supply boat. It is your lifeline, your connection to everything that isn't this rock. Its arrival is the most important day on your calendar. A day marked not by a date, but by a season and a prayer for good weather. The arrival is always a moment of high drama. You spot it first as a smudge of smoke on the horizon, then a dark shape that slowly resolves into a familiar, sturdy vessel. The excitement is a physical thing, a jolt to the system after months of monotony. It is the promise of new food, new lamp oil, new books, And, most intoxicatingly, new faces and new voices. The transfer of goods is a race against the tide and the weather. The boat's crew are masters of their trade, maneuvering their vessel with incredible skill in the churning water at the base of your rock. Crates and barrels are swung across the gap on ropes, a dangerous and delicate operation where a single mistake could send a year's worth of coffee or a precious cask of oil into the sea. You and your father work with a frantic energy, hauling the supplies up to the tower's base. For you, the most precious cargo is not the food but the mail. A canvas sack containing letters on newspapers, your only taste of the world you left behind. You will take a letter from a cousin and read it over and over again, dissecting every sentence, trying to imagine the life it describes, a life of church socials and changing seasons, a life that feels as distant and as foreign as the moon. The newspapers are weeks, sometimes months, old, but you read every word, from the political headlines to the advertisements for soap. There's a small, peculiar detail often found in the records of the Lighthouse service, the library box. It was a large wooden crate filled with books that circulated among the lighthouses on a route. When the supply boat arrived, it would drop off a new box and take the old one to the next station. This meant you never knew what you were going to get. One season it might be Shakespeare and Dickens, the next it might be dry theological texts and farming almanacs. It didn't matter, because they were new words, a fresh landscape for your mind to wander in. The arrival of the library box was, for many isolated keepers, an event of unparalleled intellectual excitement. But the visit is always too short. The crew works quickly, eager to be on their way. And then, as quickly as it appeared, the boat is gone, its smoke a fading trail on the horizon. The silence it leaves behind is heavier than before. Your larder is full, the oil room is stocked, but the rock feels emptier. The brief, chaotic injection of humanity has only served to highlight its absence. You stand on the jetty, watching the last trace of the boat disappear, and a unique form of loneliness, a post-visit melancholy, settles over you. You are safe, you are supplied, you are secure for another season, but you are once again profoundly alone. Your hope is now stored not in crates and barrels, but in the patient, slow turning of the calendar pages, until that smudge of smoke appears on the horizon once more. There are nights so clear and calm you feel you can see to the edge of forever. The sea is a sheet of black glass, the sky a spill of diamond dust. On these nights after the lamp is lit and the clockwork is wound, you stand your watch not with anxiety, but with a kind of quiet awe. You see them first as a faint, almost imperceptible star on the horizon, a light that doesn't belong to the fixed constellations. It moves with a slow, deliberate purpose. Is it a fishing schooner heading for the Grand Banks? A coastal steamer carrying passengers from one port to another? A grey clipper ship, its sails full of wind, on a long journey to a foreign land? You will never see the faces of the people on board. You will never hear their voices. You are a silent, anonymous guardian. As the ship draws closer, your light will sweep across its deck. For a fleeting moment, you imagine you can see the tiny figures of the crew, the shape of the mast, the white of a sail. They are close enough to be real, yet they remain impossibly distant, inhabitants of another world. They are living a life of movement, of camaraderie, of destinations. Your life is one of stillness, of solitude, of steadfast presence. You are connected to them in the most profound and intimate way. Your light is guiding them through the darkness, keeping them away from the hidden reefs and treacherous shoals that surround your station. The captain on the bridge, the sailor in the crow's nest, they are looking for you. They are depending on you. Your light is a character in their story, a vital, life-saving presence. Yet to them, you are not a person, flashing white every 5 seconds. You have been reduced to a pattern and abstraction. This strange, one-sided relationship is at the very heart of being a keeper. You are a protector of a flock you can never join. There's a particular kind of melancholy that comes with this knowledge, a feeling of being both essential and invisible. Some keepers wrote in their logs about the ships that would greet them. On a clear day, a passing vessel might dip its flag in a gesture of salute and respect, a silent thank you across the water, or at night they might flash a signal lamp in return. These small acknowledgements, these fleeting moments of connection, were measured, savored, and recorded in the logbook with a reverence that might seem strange to an outsider. They were proof that someone saw you, that someone knew a human hand was tending the light. One of the lesser-known duties of a lighthouse keeper was to act as a sort of maritime record keeper. You were expected to log every vessel that passed within sight, noting its type, its flag, and its direction of travel. In a time before sophisticated tracking technology, lighthouse logs provided a vital, real-time picture of coastal traffic. So use it in the watchroom, a large, leather-bound book open before you, and you write 7:15 p.m. Three-masted schooner, northbound, 9:40 p.m. unidentified, eastbound. You are an archivist of ghosts, recording the silent passage of strangers. Tonight, you watch a single vessel make its slow journey across your patch of sea. Your beam illuminates it, passes and returns. It's a steady, hypnotic rhythm. The ship gets closer, then begins to recede, its own lights shrinking once more until they are indistinguishable from the stars. It is gone. You have done your job. You have held your small candle against the vast darkness, and someone, a nameless, faceless stranger, is safer because of it. You feel a quiet, profound sense of purpose, mingled with the familiar, bittersweet take of your own isolation. You are the fixed point in a turning world, the silent witness to 1,000 journeys you will never take. The quiet nights of watching silent, passing ships are a form of peace. But the sea does not always offer peace. And your duty is not always so passive. There are times when the sea becomes a predator, and your job is not just to warn but to save. It happens on a day of churning, confused water. A thick fog has just lifted, but a vicious cross-chop remains, the angry aftermath of a passing squall. Your father is on the mainland, a rare but necessary trip that you both knew was a gamble against the autumn weather. You are alone, and you hear a sound. It's not the cry of a gull. It is a human voice, faint and desperate, carried on the wind, a shout. You grab the looking glass, your hands suddenly cold, and scan the tumultuous water. And there you see it, a small sailboat, its mast snapped, is being smashed against a half-submerged reef not a quarter-mile from your rock. It's a place the sailors call the Devil's Teeth. You see two figures clinging to the wreckage. They will not last long in that cold water. And you are faced with a choice. It is a choice that so many keepers, both men and women, faced in their lonely watch. Do you follow the regulations, which strictly forbid you from leaving the lighthouse unattended? Do you simply maintain the light, your primary official duty? Or do you answer the call of a more ancient, more human mole? For you, there is no choice. Not really. You are thinking of Ida Lewis, the keeper of Lime Rock Light, already a living legend in your time. A woman who, by the end of her career, would save more than 18 souls from the waters around her small island, rowing out in her heavy boat in weather that made seasoned sailors shudder. You are her sister in spirit, if not in name, the Dory. The one you so carefully rescued from the last storm. It is a heavy, stubborn beast, not designed for speed but for stability. Launching it alone is a nightmare. You struggle with the thick, wet ropes, your fingers raw. You heave and push, using a crude wooden roller to ease it down the slippery rocks. The boat resists a dead weight, but your desperation gives you a strength you didn't know you possessed. Finally, with a great, groaning scrape, it slides into the churning water. You jump in, and the shock of the cold spray is a jolt to your system. And you row. Rowing a heavy boat in a heaving sea is a brutal arithmetic of muscle against water. Each wave is a liquid wall that tries to push you back. You pull on the oars, your back screaming in protest, your breath coming in ragged gasps. The world narrows to this single, desperate task. The catch of the oar, the pull, the release. You aim the nose of the dory into each oncoming wave. A constant, exhausting battle to keep from being swamped. You remember an old sailor's trick, a small cask of fish oil kept in the boat for just this purpose. You uncork it and let a small, steady trickle of oil onto the water. It's a strange, almost magical phenomenon that sailors and keepers swore by. The oil spreads into a thin, invisible film, and for a few crucial yards around your boat, it smooths the breaking crests of the waves, making the water slightly less chaotic, slightly more manageable. Historians still debate the true effectiveness of this technique, but for you in this moment, it feels like a shield. You reach the wreckage. The two men are weak with cold, their hands barely able to grip the splintered wood. Getting them into the boat is the most dangerous part. The dory rises and falls violently on the waves. You time it, shouting instructions, your voice raw. You grab a hand, a collar, and with a surge of adrenaline, you haul the first man over the side. The boat lurches violently, nearly capsizing. You get the second man in. They collapse, shivering and exhausted, into the bottom of the boat. The journey back is a slow, punishing crawl. The boat is heavier now, sluggish and unresponsive. But you have the current with you, a small mercy. When the keel of the dory finally scrapes against the rocks of your island, the sound is the most beautiful thing you have ever heard. You have done it. You have looked into the furious face of the sea and wrestled to lids from its grasp. And you know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that this is what it means to be a keeper of the light. In the aftermath of the storm, in the quiet wake of the rescue, the ordinary rhythm of your life reasserts itself with a vengeance. After the high drama and the adrenaline, you are left with the mundane. And you discover that this, in its own way, is just as challenging. You discover the tyranny of routine. Your day is a loop, a spiral staircase you climb and descend in both body and spirit. It begins before dawn. You climb the 137 steps to the lantern room. You extinguish the great lamp, its duty done. You draw the heavy linen curtains around the lens to protect it from the discoloring rays of the sun. You wind down the clockwork weights. You descend. Then the cleaning begins. Not the grand, ceremonial polishing of the lens, but the relentless, grimy, daily battle against soot and carbon. The lamped chimney is black with the night's bourbon. You remove it carefully and spend a solid half-hour cleaning it, first with a dry cloth, then a damp one, until it is perfectly clear again. Any speck you miss will create a shadow in the beam. You scrape the carbon crust from the wicks, trimming them with the precision of a jeweler, carefully straining the oil through a fine mesh to remove any impurities. Your hands are perpetually slick with kerosene or whale oil, the smell clinging to your skin and clothes no matter how much you scrub with harsh lye soap. Then there is the brass. So much brass. The lamp mechanism, the fuel lines, the door handles, the railings. In the salt-laced air, brass tarnishes with a horrifying speed, turning a dull, sickly green. And so part of every day is spent with a tin of polish and a pile of rags, rubbing and drubbing until every surface gleams. It is a Sisyphean task. You no sooner finish the last piece of brass than the first is already starting to dull. It is a physical manifestation of the endless, repetitive nature of your life. This relentless routine is both a curse and a blessing. It is a form of madness, the same tasks performed in the same order, day after day, week after week, month after month. The sheer grinding monotony of it can feel like a prison, a life sentence of polishing and winding. There is no novelty, no spontaneity. But it is also a powerful anchor in a sea of isolation. The routine gives your days a shape, a purpose. It is a set of rituals that keep you grounded, that prevent your mind from drifting into the dangerous, uncharted waters of despair. When the loneliness feels like a physical weight, you can lose yourself in the familiar, mindless task of polishing brass. When the memory of the world outside feels like a painful ghost, you can focus on the delicate, precise act of trimming a wick. The routine saves you. It is a wall you build brick by tedious brick against the chaos of your own mind. There's a strange, almost comical detail you learn about the life of a keeper. The battle against tallow. In the days of whale oil, the best fuel was sperm oil, which burned cleanly but was expensive. Cheaper oils would often congeal in the cold, so keepers had to find ways to keep the fuel lines warm, sometimes wrapping them in heated cloths. And in the clockwork mechanism, the gears were lubricated with tallow or animal fat. In the winter, the tallow would harden, and the keeper would harden. Gently warm the gears with a small, shielded lamp to get them moving again without starting a fire. It's a tiny, forgotten detail, but it speaks volumes about the constant, hands-on struggle to keep the machine of the lighthouse alive. For you, it's just another part of the litany, another verse in the endless song of your work. Wind, trim, clean, polish, warm, the tallow, repeat. The tower is a machine for living, a vertical stack of duties. But your mind needs more than duty. It needs a place to go when the brass is polished and the wicks are trimmed. It needs a story. And in your profoundly quiet world, stories are a rare and precious commodity. This is why the library box, that circulating trove of books from the Lighthouse service, is treated with such reverence. When its contents are unpacked, it feels like Christmas and your birthday rolled into one. You handle the books with a care bordering on worship. You run your fingers over their cloth-bound covers. You breathe in their musty, wonderful smell of paper and ink and the dozen other lighthouses they have visited before yours. The collection is always a gamble. You might find a thrilling adventure novel by Stevenson or a volume of Tennyson's poetry that you can read aloud to the gulls. These are the treasures. They are windows out of the tower, portals to other worlds. You can lose yourself for hours in a naval battle in the South Pacific, or a love affair in the English countryside. The story fills the silence, populates your world with new voices, new places, new ideas. But just as often, the box contains what the keepers grimly call ballast. Dry, dense books on agricultural science, volumes of sermons from a forgotten preacher, a treatise on the proper ventilation of public buildings. To a person in the outside world, these books would be impossibly, punishingly dull. To you, they are still words. You read the book on crop rotation, even though the only thing that grows on your rock is lichen. You read the sermons, dissecting their complex, archaic sentences. You read the treatise on ventilation, and for a week, you become an obsessive expert on the flow of air. You do this because the act of reading, of processing language and ideas, is an exercise for your mind, a vital form of mental calisthenics that keeps your own thoughts from running in the same, tired, circular pattern. You have your own small, personal collection, of course. The handful of books you brought with you in your trunk. There is a Bible, its pages thin and worn. There is a copy of Shakespeare, a gift from a teacher long ago. And perhaps a book of household remedies. You know these books by heart. You have read them so many times that the words have lost some of their meaning and have become a kind of comforting, familiar music. You can open to any page and know the sentences that are coming. They are like old friends whose stories you have heard 100 times but still listen to with affection. Historians who study the logs and letters of lighthouse keepers are often struck by how frequently they mention books. The request for a specific volume, the delight in a new arrival, the disappointment in a poor selection. These are common themes. It underscores how vital reading was as a tool for survival, as important as the oil for the lamp or the flour for the bread. It was fuel for the mind. One of the oddest, and most poignant, details to emerge from this history is the phenomenon of reading the dictionary. In the absence of new material, some keepers would simply read the dictionary, page by page. It was a way to encounter new words, to learn new things, to force the mind to engage with something structured and logical. You can picture it, a keeper, sitting at the small wooden table in the round room, the wind howling outside, slowly, methodically, reading the definitions of words they will never have the opportunity to use in conversation. Tonight you have finished the last of the new books. A quiet sadness settles in. The window is closed for now, so you pick up one of your old friends, the Shakespeare, and by the light of a small oil lamp you begin to read. Oh wonder, you whisper the words into the quiet room. How many goodly creatures are there here? How boisterous mankind is. How boisterous mankind is. And for a little while, the tower is no longer a prison, but a stage. There are other inhabitants of your rock, ones that travel not by sea but by air. And on certain nights, your tower of light becomes a thing of terrible, fatal beauty. It happens during the spring and autumn migrations, on moonless, overcast nights, when the clouds hang low and the air is thick with mist. Your light is the only star in a blind and featureless sky. The birds, navigating by ancient, encoded instincts that scientists still don't fully understand, are drawn to it. They come not as a gentle flock, but as a silent, feathered hurricane. You hear it first as a faint, inexplicable sound, a soft rustling, whispering noise that seems to come from all directions at once. Then the tapping begins. A gentle tick against the thick glass of the lantern room. Then another, Then another. You climb the final ladder into the lantern room and you see it. The air outside the glass is a swirling, chaotic birds. Thousands of them. Warblers, sparrows, thrushes, small, migratory songbirds, disoriented by the weather and mesmerized by the hypnotic, sweeping beam of the light. They flutter in the beam, their small bodies illuminated like moths, their wings a blur. They circle the tower endlessly, trapped in the orbit of the light, unable to break away and continue their journey. The gentle tapping becomes a series of sharp, percussive cracks. Birds, exhausted and confused, begin to fly directly into the glass. The sound is a sickening, heartbreaking thud. You see a small body fall away into the darkness, a life extinguished in an instant. Another strikes the glass, and another. It is a constant, horrific rain of small bodies. There is nothing you can do. You cannot turn off the light that would endanger human lives at sea. You are forced to stand there, a helpless witness to a strange and terrible natural tragedy. The keepers of this era often wrote about these nights with a sense of profound distress. It was an ornithological massacre, and they were the unwilling hosts. Some keepers would try to hang nets or build perches on the lantern gallery to give the birds a place to land, but these efforts were mostly futile against the sheer, overwhelming number of them. In the morning, the true horror is revealed. The gallery walkway that encircles the lantern room is littered with the bodies of the birds. Sometimes hundreds of them. A soft, feathered carpet of death. Part of your morning routine on these days is to take a broom and a bucket and to clear them away. You pick up the small, impossibly light bodies, their wings broken, their beautiful plumage stained. It is a somber, silent task. You are not just cleaning. You are performing a funeral rite for a flock of fallen angels. There's a small, curious detail that adds another layer of strangeness to this phenomenon. Naturalists in the late 19th century realized that these lighthouse tragedies, while horrific, presented a unique scientific opportunity. They would write to keepers, asking them to collect the dead birds and ship them to museums for identification. And so many lighthouse keepers became unlikely and unpaid contributors to the science of ornithology. You can imagine a keeper, after a brutal night of storm and death, carefully packing the tiny bodies of rare warblers into a crate with letters of instruction from a distant professor. It's a bizarre intersection of duty, tragedy, and science. Today you find a small thrush on the gallery that is still alive. Its wing is broken, but it is breathing. You pick it up gently. Its tiny heart beats a frantic rhythm against your palm. You carry it down the 137 steps to your living quarters. You fashion a small splint from a matchstick and a strip of cloth. You give it a few drops of water. It is a tiny, futile gesture of kindness in the face of an immense, natural cruelty. You don't know if it will live. But in this moment, your job is not to keep a great light for a distant, faceless humanity. It is to care for this one small, broken life, and it feels just as important. Your father is sick. It begins as a cough, a deep, rattling sound that echoes in the small, round room. Then comes the fever, a burning heat you can feel from a foot away, followed by chills that leave him shaking uncontrollably in his bunk. He is a strong man, weathered by the sea and the wind, but this illness lays him low. He becomes weak, delirious, his words a jumble of memories and anxieties. And you are alone with him, trapped on your rock, the mainland a distant, impossible dream. There is no medicine beyond the small chest of household remedies. A bottle of foul-smelling liniment, some packets of herbal powders, a jar of goose grease. You do what you can. You bathe his forehead with cool, damp cloths. You try to force sips of water and thin broth between his cracked lips. Use it by his bunk, listening to his ragged breathing, a sound that fills every inch of the small, round room. And through it all, the tower demands its due. The light does not care about sickness. The ships at sea do not know of your private crisis. So you work. You rise in the pre-dawn darkness, your body aching with a weariness that is more than physical. You climb the stairs, your legs heavy, and extinguish the lamp. You do the cleaning, the polishing, the endless repetitive tasks that keep the tower alive. You climb down, tend to your father, check his fever, and then you climb back up to ready the lamp for the coming night. A storm rolls in. Not a violent, hurricane for scale, but a relentless, multi-day nor'easter that settles over you like a wet, grey wool blanket. The wind howls, the sea churns, and you are truly, terrifyingly trapped. The possibility of your father rowing for help is gone. The chance of a passing ship putting a signal of distress is gone. You are on your own. This is the story of Abby Burgess, a teenage girl at the Matinicus Rock Light in Maine. In the winter of 1856, her father, the keeper, had to go to the mainland for supplies, including medicine for his sick wife. He left Abby in charge of the Light and her younger sisters. A massive storm hit, trapping her father on the mainland for desperate weeks. For 28 days, Abby, alone with her sick mother and sisters, kept the light burning. The waves swept over the island, destroying their small house and forcing them to take refuge in the tower itself. She saved her family, and she kept the light burning every single night. Her story became a sensation, a tale of quiet, steadfast heroism. And now, you are living her story. Your small living quarters, normally a sanctuary, feel like a trap. The constant, thunderous noise of the storm is the soundtrack to your father's labored breathing. The tower shudders with the impact of the waves. You worry that your supply of oil will run out, that the wicks will fail, that you will make some small, catastrophic mistake in your exhaustion. You measure your life in tiny, crucial increments. One more hour of the lamp burning, one more sip of water for your father, one more trip up the endless stairs. You lose track of time. Day and night blur into a single, continuous twilight of work and worry. You sleep in snatches, sitting in a chair by your father's bunk, your head nodding forward until a particularly violent crash of a wave jolts you awake. Fear is a constant companion, a cold knot in your stomach. But you do not let it win. You move through your duties with a methodical, almost robotic calm. You have to. If you allow yourself to feel the full weight of your terror and your exhaustion, you know you will break. And then one morning, the wind begins to drop. The thunder of the waves subsides to a low grumble. A sliver of pale, watery sunlight breaks through the clouds. And your father opens his eyes. He looks at you, his gaze clear for the first time in days. The light, he whispers, his voice a dry rasp. It's burning, you say. It never went out. A faint, small smile touches his lips. He closes his eyes and slips into a deep, healing sleep. You stand, your body trembling with a release of tension that is so profound it is almost painful. You look out the small window at the calming sea. You have survived. You have saved your family. And in the quiet, weary solitude of your tower, you understand the true meaning of your vow. The storm has passed, your father is slowly recovering, and the relentless, familiar rhythm of tower life returns. But something has changed. You've begun to notice a peculiar physical sensation, a subtle but persistent tremor in your hands. At first you dismiss it as a lingering effect of exhaustion and adrenaline, but it doesn't go away. When you hold your hand out, you can see a fine, high-frequency vibration, as if the nerves themselves are humming. You've developed a case of what old keepers used to call the shakes. It was a strange, unofficial malady of the profession, a physical ailment that seemed to be a direct result of living inside a giant, vibrating tuning fork. For years, you have stood, worked, and slept in a structure that is in a state of constant, subtle motion. The vibration from the wind, the low-frequency resonance from the crashing waves, the gentle but perceptible swaying during a gale, all of it has been absorbed by your body. Your own internal gyroscope has been subtly, permanently recalibrated. It's a strange and unsettling feeling. You are living with the ghost of 1,000 storms inside you. You feel it most when you lie in your bunk at night, in the deep quiet, with the only sound being the distant sigh of the waves. You can feel the tremor in your limbs. It is a reminder that this place, your home, is not like other homes. It is a living thing, an entity that moves and breathes and sways, and you have become so attuned to its rhythms that you have absorbed them into your own being. This physical merging with your environment is a little-known aspect of a keeper's life, while the psychological toll of isolation is often discussed. The direct, physical imprint of the tower on the human body is a more obscure piece of history, There are no formal medical studies from the era, of course. The evidence is purely anecdotal, found in memoirs and letters, a footnote in the history of occupational hazards, yet a profound reality for those who lived it. The tower has affected your other senses too. Your hearing has become attuned to its specific language. You can be in a deep sleep and the slightest change in the rhythmic creak of the clockwork mechanism will bring you instantly awake. It's a sound that a visitor would never even notice, but to you it's a vital sign, a signal that something might be amiss. You have developed a keeper's ear, an ability to diagnose the health of your tower by its sounds alone. Your eyes, too, have adapted. You have spent countless hours staring into the darkness, scanning the horizon for the faintest pinprick of light. You've become a connoisseur of darkness, able to distinguish the deep, inky black of a moonless, overcast night from the softer, star-dusted charcoal of a clear one. And you have an almost superhuman ability to spot a distant light, a skill honed by a responsibility that is measured in miles and human life. But it is the trembling that is the most unsettling. It is a constant, physical reminder that you cannot leave this place behind. Even if you were to return to the mainland, the tower would come with you, a ghostly, vibrating echo in your own bones. It's a small, strange price to pay for a life spent in service to the light, a secret handshake shared by the few who have known what it is to live and sleep in the heart of a storm. You are no longer just living in the lighthouse. The lighthouse is living in you. The quiet that follows your father's recovery is different from the quiet that came before. It's heavier. The fear of a physical crisis has passed, but it has left a space for a more insidious, more spectral fear to creep in. It's the fear that has been whispered about in port towns and sailors' inns for as long as there have been lighthouses. It is the fear of lighthouse madness. It's not a medical term. You won't find it in any of your books. It is a legend, a boogeyman for keepers. A story told in hushed tones about men who were found staring, vacant-eyed at a wall, or who threw themselves from the lantern gallery into the sea below. Stories of keepers who let the light go out for no reason at all. Your father told you the most famous story once, on a calm, clear night, his voice low as he polished a brass fitting. It was a cautionary tale. He told you about the small lighthouse, a lonely tower on a reef off the coast of Wales. A long time ago, it was manned by two keepers, a man named Thomas Howell and his partner, Thomas Griffith. The story goes that they did not get along. They were known to argue, their angry voices sometimes carrying across the water to passing fishing boats. One day, Griffith fell ill and died. It was a sudden tragic accident of nature. But Howell was terrified. He was alone with the body, and he knew of the rumors about their arguments. He was convinced that if he simply buried the body at sea, people would accuse him of murder. So, in a desperate attempt to prove his innocence, he built a makeshift coffin out of some old boards, placed his former partner's body inside, and lashed it to the outside of the lantern gallery in full view of any passing ship. But a storm rolled in. A terrible, relentless storm that lasted for weeks, trapping him on the rock. The winds tore at the coffin, ripping the wood apart until the body was exposed, an arm hanging free. And in the shrieking gale, the arm would swing and sway, tapping against the lantern room glass as if the dead man were knocking, trying to get in. For weeks Howell was trapped in that glass room, keeping the light burning, with the decomposing, tapping corpse of his companion just outside the window. When a relief boat was finally able to reach the lighthouse, they found him a changed man. His hair had reportedly turned white, and he was raving, incoherent. He had kept the light burning, but he had lost his mind. The story always ends there. But for you, sitting in the quiet of your own tower, it raises a chilling question. Was it a unique sickness, this lighthouse madness, or was it simply the entirely predictable result of unimaginable grief, terror, guilt, and isolation? Historians and psychologists to this day still debate the very existence of lighthouse madness as a distinct condition. They argue about whether it was a genuine psychological phenomenon or a convenient label for the various, very human ways a mind can fracture under unbearable pressure. You look at your father, dozing in his chair, the lines of his illness still etched on his face. You think of the long nights you spent alone, listening to his delirious muttering. What if he hadn't recovered? You would have been alone, and the same fear that gripped Thomas Howell would have gripped you. What do you do? How do you prove you are not to blame? How do you survive the silence that follows? You begin to understand that the madness, if it exists, is not a sudden break. It is a slow, creeping erosion. It is the result of too many days in a row of the same view, the same sound, the same routine. It's the product of a mind turning in on itself, with no new thoughts or experiences to grind against. It's the moment you can no longer be sure if the faint voice you heard was the wind, or something you imagined. It's the suspicion that the walls themselves are listening, that the rhythmic sweep of the light is measuring out the slow unraveling of your own sanity. You find yourself watching for the signs in your father and in yourself, and you pray that the supply boat with its new books and new faces comes very, very soon. The mail. It arrives like a message in a bottle, a dispatch from another universe. When the supply boat finally comes after the terror of the storm and the long, slow recovery, the canvas mailbag is the first thing you look for. It feels heavier than it should, weighted with the hopes and fears of the past few months. You take the letters and the newspapers to your small table, and you create a ritual. You don't tear into them. You savor them. You arrange them in a neat pile. You make a cup of tea. You are about to bridge the immense gap of time and distance that separates you from the rest of the world. You open a letter from your aunt on the mainland. The postmark is from 6 weeks ago. The ink is slightly faded. As you read her words, you are performing a kind of mental time travel. She writes about a town fair that happened 2 months ago, about the prize her neighbor won for the largest pumpkin. She talks about the weather they were having in early autumn, a spell of warm, sunny days that you never experienced. She asks questions you can't answer, questions about how you are faring, if you need anything. The letter is a ghost. It is a snapshot of a moment that is long past, a conversation with a person who has since lived 6 more weeks of their life, a life you know nothing about. This temporal distortion is a fundamental, and deeply strange, aspect of a keeper's life. You are living in a permanent state of being out of sync with the rest of humanity. Your news is always old news. You will read in a month-old newspaper about a political crisis that has, in all likelihood, already been resolved. You will read about storms that have already passed, about people who have been born, married, or died, all while you were polishing brass and trimming wick. You learn to read between the lines to piece together the narrative of the world from these delayed fragments. It's like being a historian of the present, constantly assembling a picture of what was happening and trying to extrapolate what might be happening now. This strange, disconnected relationship with current events is something historians find fascinating in the letters of keepers. They were both completely isolated from and, in their own way, keenly interested in the goings-on of the world. They were spectators watching a play, but they were only ever given the script from the previous act. This time lag also affects your own communication. You sit down to write a reply to your aunt. What do you say? Do you tell her about the terrible storm? About your father's illness? By the time she receives your letter, weeks or months from now, it will be old news. Your present crisis will be her distant past. So you write in generalities. You write that the work is hard but rewarding. You write that your father has been under the weather but is now feeling better. You smooth out the terrifying peaks and valleys of your existence into a calm, manageable narrative. You are curating your own life for an audience that will not receive it until long after the curtain has fallen. There's a small, poignant detail about Lighthouse mail, its unreliability. Mail was at the mercy of the same forces, everything else, the weather and the waves. A supply boat might be delayed for weeks. A mailbag could be lost overboard in a rough transfer. For a keeper, a lost letter was not a minor inconvenience. It was a lost connection, a broken thread to the world. It was a piece of their heart, adrift on the sea. You fold your finished letter, place it in an envelope, and put it in the outgoing mailbag. It will sit there, waiting for the next boat, a silent testament to your life on this rock. It is a message of hope, a confirmation that you are still here, still tending the light, still a part of the world, even if you are living several weeks behind it. You have received your ghosts from the past, and you have sent your own ghost into the future. And now you return to the timeless, unchanging present of the tower. One day, the supply boat brings something new. Not just the usual sacks of flour and barrels of oil, but several heavy, square tins of a liquid you've only heard about. It is kerosene. The Lighthouse service, in its slow, methodical march of progress, has decided your tower is to be upgraded. The age of whale oil is ending. The age of petroleum has arrived. This is a bigger change than it sounds. For your entire life here, the tower has had a specific smell, a specific texture. The heavy, slightly fishy scent of whale oil has permeated everything. The wood of the cupboards, your clothes, your skin. It has been the perfume of your profession. Kerosene is different. It's sharper, more chemical, the smell of a new and unfamiliar world. Your father, now fully recovered, looks at the tins with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. He is a man of the old ways. He understands the unique properties of sperm oil, how it burns with a clear, steady flame. He knows how to coax a good light from it, how to manage its quirks. This new fuel is an unknown quantity. The change requires a modification to the lamp itself. The wicks are different. The burner's emblem has to be replaced. A technician, a man from the mainland with clean hands and a confident air, has come on the supply boat to oversee the transition. He works with a brisk, modern efficiency that feels alien in the slow, deliberate world of the tower. He talks about lumens and combustion efficiency, words you don't understand. You and your father watch as he disassembles the heart of your lamp, the familiar brass and copper pieces you have cleaned 1,000 times, and replaces them with new, slightly different parts. The technician shows you how to operate the new system. It's simpler, he explains. The fuel flows more evenly. The flame is easier to regulate. It produces less soot. It is, he says with a proud smile, an improvement. And he is right. That night, when you light the new kerosene-fueled lamp, the difference is startling. The flame is whiter, brighter, more intense. The light it casts seems to pierce the darkness with a new authority. The technician was also right about the soot. The morning after cleaning is noticeably easier. There is less carbon on the chimney, less grime to polish away. Your daily, relentless battle has become just a little bit easier. This technological shift was a huge event in the history of lighthouses. The transition from organic fuels like whale oil and lard oil to mineral oil or kerosene in the late 19th century dramatically increased the power and reliability of the lights. It was a key step in the industrialization of maritime safety. For the keepers, it meant a change in the very chemistry of their work. They had to learn new procedures, new safety precautions. Kerosene was more volatile than whale oil, and the risk of fire, always a keeper's greatest fear, was now slightly different, requiring new vigilance. There is a small but significant sensory detail that is lost in this transition. Whale oil, especially in the cold, could congeal and thicken. Keepers developed an instinctual feel for it, knowing by the temperature of the air how the oil would behave, whether it would flow freely or sluggishly. Kerosene was consistent. It behaved the same way on a warm night as on a cold one. This new reliability was a great advantage, but it removed a layer of that deep, intuitive knowledge that you had so painstakingly acquired. Your job has become a little less of an art and a little more of a science. You stand in the lantern room, the new, sharp smell of kerosene in the air, and you watch the brilliant, white beam sweep across the water. It is a better light, a more powerful light. The world is a little bit safer tonight because of it, but you feel a faint, strange sense of nostalgia for the old yellow flame, for the familiar, heavy smell of the whale oil. It feels like a small piece of the tower's soul has been replaced with something more efficient, but less personal. Progress has arrived at your only rock, and it smells like the future. The technician, the man with the clean hands and the modern words, does not just talk about kerosene. During his brief, whirlwind visit, he speaks of other marvels. He talks about new clockwork mechanisms, so finely balanced and efficient that they can run for an entire night on a single winding. He mentions experimental automatic strikers for the fob bells, devices that would replace the back-breaking labor of cranking a handle for hours on end. And then he says the word that hangs in the air long after he is gone. He talks about on what lights. He describes new systems being tested in France, using incandescent mantles and compressed gas. Lights that could, in theory, be lit and extinguished automatically. Lights that could run for weeks or even months without a human hand to tend them. He says it with the excitement of an engineer, a man in love with progress and efficiency. He sees a future of perfect, reliable lights, a network of automated sentinels protecting the coastlines of the world with mathematical precision. He doesn't see you. He doesn't see your father. He doesn't see the 137 steps, the polished brass, the lonely vigils, the life and death struggle of a rescue in a small boat. He sees a problem, the fallible, expensive human element, and he sees a solution, automation. After he leaves, the idea settles into the quiet corners of the tower. An unwatched light, a lighthouse with no keeper. The concept is so alien it's difficult to even imagine. This tower is not just a structure to you, it is a living entity, with a heart that you tend and a voice that you sound. The idea of it standing here cold and empty, its light turning with the cold precision of a machine, feels like a violation. It feels like a violation. Your father scoffs at the idea. A machine can't see a ship in distress, he says, rubbing polish onto a brass handle. A machine can't feel the weather turning. A machine can't clear ice from the lantern glass in a winter storm. He is right, of course. The role of a keeper has always been so much more than just keeping the light lit. You are a watchman, a rescuer, a record keeper, the human consciousness of this remote patch of sea. But still, the seed of the idea has been planted. It is a whisper of an automated future. This was the great, slow-moving anxiety that began to creep into the profession in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Keepers, who had been the masters of their remote domains, began to hear these rumors of machines that could do their work. The very qualities that made a good keeper, patience, vigilance, meticulous attention to detail, were the very qualities that engineers were trying to build into their new automated systems. Historians often mark the true end of the lighthouse keeper era with the widespread automation that took place much later, in the mid to late 20th century. But the beginning of the end was here, in these early whispers. It was in the arrival of a slightly more efficient fuel, a slightly better clockwork, a slightly more reliable burner. Each small improvement, each step that made the keeper's job a little easier, was also a step that made the keeper a little less essential. There's a strange irony in this. For generations, keepers had prayed for a better lamp, a more reliable mechanism, an easier way to make it through a stormy night. And now that it was arriving, piece by piece, it came with an unspoken threat. The reward for all their dedicated, tireless service was the slow, creeping realization that they were designing themselves out of a job. You stand in the watch room, looking out at the darkening sea. The new, bright kerosene light springs to life, its powerful beam sweeping across the waves. It is a testament to human ingenuity. But tonight, for the first time, it also looks a little lonely. It is a beautiful, brilliant light, but it carries with it a faint, chilling whisper of a time when no one will be here to watch it burn. Years pass. The relentless, circular rhythm of the tower grinds them down into a fine dust of memory. The seasons turn, marked by the changing slant of the sun and the shifting patterns of the migratory birds. Your father grows older, his movements slower, his hands more prone to the keeper's tremor. More of the work, the heavy, physical labor of hauling oil and winding the great weights, falls to you. Your own hands are no longer the hands of a young girl. They are strong, calloused, and competent. A map of your life's work etched into the skin. You have become a master of your craft. You can read the weather in a wisp of cloud, diagnose a problem in the clockwork by a faint change in its ticking, and calm a sputtering lamp with a surgeon's steady touch. The tower is no longer just your home, it is an extension of yourself. You know its every groan, its every secret. But a profound, unspoken sadness has begun to settle in your heart. You have dedicated your life to this service. You have performed the work of a keeper with a diligence and a skill that would rival any man in the lighthouse service. You have faced storms, battled sickness, and rescued the drowning. You have poured your youth and your strength into this cold stone tower. And no one will ever know. Your name does not appear in the official logbook. That book, with its neat columns and official-looking script, records the weather, the ships passed, the oil consumed. It lists your father as the principal keeper. You are a ghost in your own history. Your immense contribution, your endless hours of labor and vigilance, are invisible to the official record. This was the fate of countless women in Lighthouse service. Wives, daughters, and sometimes sisters who performed all the duties of a keeper, but held none of the recognition. Their work was essential but unaccompanied lead, a silent, supporting framework that held the entire system up. Historians who study the service now must read between the lines of the official records, using personal letters, diaries, and local histories to try and piece together the stories of these forgotten women. It is a painstaking work of historical archaeology, trying to give names to the nameless and voices to the silent. You think of Abby Burgess, the hero of Martinicus Rock. Her story became famous, a celebrated tale of female courage. But her fame was the exception, not the rule. And even she struggled for official recognition for years. For most women like you, there would be no newspaper articles, no medals for bravery, no official title. There was only the work itself, and the quiet, personal knowledge of a job well done. There's a small, poignant detail that highlights this invisibility. When a lighthouse inspector, a stern, uniformed official from the mainland, would make his annual visit, it was often a frantic, choreographed event. The keeper and his family would work for days to ensure every inch of the tower was spotless, every piece of brass gleaming, every logbook entry perfect. But when the inspector arrived, the wife or daughter, who had likely done the majority of the cleaning, was expected to become a shadow, to serve tea and then disappear, leaving the two men, the official keeper and the official inspector, to discuss the official business of the tower. You stand on the gallery one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The sea is calm, the air is still. You are preparing for another night's watch. Another 16 hours of ensuring the light burns brightly. It is a beautiful, peaceful moment. But it is tinged with the bittersweet knowledge of your own anonymity. You are the keeper of a flame that is seen by thousands, but you, the keeper, are seen by no one. Your legacy will not be written in any book. It will be written in the light itself, in its unwavering, rhythmic sweep across the dark water. It is a story told every night, in a language of light, to an audience of strangers. And for now, that will have to be enough. The day comes as you always knew it would. But it still arrives as a shock. It comes not in a storm, but in an official-looking envelope delivered by the supply boat. It is a letter from the Lighthouse service. Your father is being retired. His years of service are over. And the letter adds, in a cool, bureaucratic phrase, that the station is scheduled to be fully automated in the coming year. You are being retired too, though you have no official position to be retired from. You are being automated. Replaced by a machine of gears and gas canisters, a clockwork heart that will need no sleep, no food, no human warmth. The last 2 weeks in the tower are dreamlike, surreal. You go through the familiar motions, the endless routines, but they are all shadowed by the knowledge that you are doing them for the last time. Every climb up the 137 steps is a farewell. Every turn of the crank that wins the clockwork is a final, physical conversation with the tower's soul. You polish the great lens not just to clean it, but to say goodbye, your hand tracing the cool curved glass like the face of a loved one. The day the technicians arrive to install the new automatic light, they are loud, efficient men, their voices echoing in the stone cylinder that has for so long known only your quiet speech. They carry toolboxes and strange, new equipment. They work with a detached professionalism, dismantling the beautiful, familiar lamp with its brass fittings and delicate wicks. They are performing a heart transplant, and you are watching, a helpless family member, as the soul of your home is removed. In its place they install the new apparatus. It's a marvel of engineering, you have to admit. A cluster of incandescent mantles, a precise, automatic timing mechanism, and large tanks of pressurized gas. It is compact, self-contained, and utterly impersonal. It has no wicks to trim, no brass to polish, no personality to coax a good light from. It is a perfect machine. On your last night, The technicians allow you to light it one final time. But there is no flame. You turn a valve, and with a soft hiss the gas flows. You flick a striker, and the mantles ignite with a sudden silent, brilliant white glare. It is an alien light, cold and unwavering, without the gentle, living flicker of the old oil flame. The new clockwork mechanism, powered by the gas pressure itself, begins to turn the lens. It is perfect. It is relentless. The next morning, you pack your few belongings into the same small wooden runk you arrived with so many years ago. You take one last look at the small round living quarters, the bunks built into the wall, the table bolted to the floor. It looks smaller, emptier than you have ever seen it. You step onto the supply boat. As it pulls away from the rock, you keep your eyes fixed on the tower. It grows smaller and smaller until it is once again just a grey stone tooth on the horizon. That night, as the boat makes its way to the mainland, you stay on the deck, wrapped in a blanket, and you watch. Just as the last light fades from the sky, you see it. A brilliant, white flash on the horizon, then another. The pattern is perfect, the timing exact. You arrive on the mainland, and the world is a physical assault. The noise is the first thing that hits you. The clatter of carts, the shouting of vendors, the sheer, overwhelming hum of humanity. It's a deafening roar after a lifetime of listening to the wind and the waves. The ground feels strangely, stubbornly still beneath your feet, a solid nest that makes you feel dizzy and unbalanced. People move so fast, their faces a blur. It is a world. It is a world that is too loud, too fast, too bright. A creature from another, quieter time, washed up on a foreign shore. You have stepped out of your story and into someone else's, and you don't know the words. You find a small cottage in a quiet fishing village, a place where you can still smell the salt in the air and hear the distant cry of the gulls. It is a strange new life, a horizontal life of rooms with corners and doors that open into other rooms, not just onto a spiraling staircase. You learn to walk on ground that does not move, to sleep in a bed that does not feel the faint, deep tremor of the sea. But you are haunted by the tower. At night, you sometimes wake up in a panic, your heart pounding with the certainty that you have forgotten to win the clockwork, that the light has gone out. You have to lie there in the darkness, breathing slowly, reminding yourself that it is not your duty anymore. A machine is doing your work, a machine that never forgets and never sleeps. You take long walks along the shore. From a high cliff on a clear day, you can just see it. A tiny grey needle on the horizon. Your tower. It looks impossibly small and distant, a half-forgotten memory. But you know it's every stone. You can feel the cold of its walls, smell the lingering scent of oil and brass. One day, an old fisherman tells you a story. He says that on foggy nights, when the new automated foghorn sounds its monotonous, mechanical blast, he sometimes thinks he can hear another sound mixed in with it. A fainter, more musical tone. The sound of the old hand-cranked horn, the one that took a human arm to give it a voice. He says it's just the wind playing tricks in the fog, of course. But he winks as he says it. The tower has become a ghost of itself, a place of legends. The automated light still flashes, a perfect, soulless metronome. But the human light, the light of vigilance and care and rescue, has been extinguished. You are a living ghost of a dead profession. As the years go by, the technology improves even further. The gas-powered light is eventually replaced by an electric one, powered by solar panels and batteries. The great Fresnel lens, that magnificent beehive heart of the tower, is deemed obsolete. It is carefully disassembled and removed, sent away to a museum on the mainland where it will sit, cold and lifeless, behind a velvet rope. It is replaced by a small, efficient, modern beacon, a simple flashing bulb that does the same job with a fraction of the artistry. You visit the museum once. You stand before the great lens enclosed in its glass case. You see the prisms you polished 1,000 times. You can almost feel the phantom sensation of the softening cloth in your hand. Children run past, pointing at the big diamond, unaware of the human hands that once tended it, the lives it protected, the stories it witnessed. To them, it is a beautiful, inert object. To you, it is a cathedral. This was the fate of so many of these magnificent structures. Their human purpose was stripped away, piece by piece, until only the stone shell remained. An empty tower, a lingering light. They became landmarks, navigational aids on a chart, but they ceased to be homes. They ceased to have a heartbeat. Historians and preservation societies now work to save these towers, to tell the stories of the people who lived inside them. They are trying to reclaim the ghosts, to give them a voice. You live out your days in your small cottage. You watch the ships come and go from the harbor. And every night, before you go to sleep, you look out your window to the dark horizon, and you wait. And then you see it. The faint, familiar flash. 1, 2, 3, 4, it passes. 1, 2, 3, 4. It passes again. The tower is still there. Then you know that a part of you is still there too. A silent, invisible keeper, standing watch in an empty tower forever. Years fold into years, and your life by the sea finds its own quiet rhythm. The violent storms and the profound isolation of the tower had been replaced by the gentle turning of the seasons in the village, the ebb and flow of the tides in the harbor. Your hands, once calloused from hauling ropes and polishing brass, have softened. But the memories remain as clear and as constant as the northern star. One evening you are sitting by your small fireplace, a cup of tea warming your hands. A young woman from the village, a history student home from university, has come to talk to you. She has heard the stories, the whispers that you are one of the last people alive who remembers what it was like, who lived the life of a keeper. She comes with a notebook and a respectful, curious gaze. She asks you about the storms, and you tell her of the shaking tower, of the feeling of being a prisoner in a bell. She asks about the loneliness, and you try to describe the profound, elemental quiet, the way your own thoughts could become a deafening roar. And as you talk, you realize something profound. The light you kept was not just a beam from a lamp. It was more than that. It was a manifestation of a human quality, a quality that the new, automated world is in danger of forgetting. It was the light of steadfastness, the light of showing up, day after day, night after night, in the face of monotony and terror, and doing the work that needed to be done. It was the light of responsibility, the quiet, solemn vow to protect the unseen, unknown stranger at sea. It was the light of resilience, the ability to be battered by the full force of nature's fury and to emerge, shaken but unbroken, and to light the lamp again. You kept the physical light, yes. But in doing so, you were tending to these other, more internal lights. These are the lights that no machine can ever replicate. An automated beacon can flash a warning, but it cannot feel a sense of duty. A solar panel can generate a current, but it cannot generate courage. A timing mechanism can be precise, but it cannot be compassionate. The history of the lighthouse keepers, especially the forgotten stories of the women who served in silence, is not just a collection of maritime anecdotes. It is a story about a particular kind of human strength. It is about the power of a single, focused individual to hold back the chaos of the world, even if only for a little while, in one small corner of the planet. You explain to the young woman that the tower taught you something that has stayed with you, long after you left it. It taught you how to be a fixed point. In a world that is always changing, always moving, the tower taught you the value of being still, of being reliable, of being present. It taught you that the most heroic acts are often the quietest ones, the ones performed without an audience, driven only by a sense of purpose. She asks you finally if you miss it. The question hangs in the quiet, firelit room. Do you miss the fear, the loneliness, the back-breaking labor? No. But you miss the purpose. You miss the profound, simple clarity of knowing, with every fiber of your being, what you were meant to do at any given moment. You miss the feeling of standing in the lantern room at dusk, a small human hand creating a star on earth. You have carried that tower with you all these years. It is no longer a prison of stone and sea. It has become an internal structure, a quiet, strong place in your own heart. The resilience you learned there, the steadfastness, the ability to endure the long dark nights, that is the true light you have been keeping all this time. It did not go out when you left the rock. It is the light you carry within you. And you realize as you finish your story that it is a light that will never be automated. And so the last story is told, The last light is lit. You can feel the echo of it now, a gentle, steady pulse behind your closed eyelids. The sound of the waves, which was once a thunderous roar, has softened to a gentle, rhythmic soothing, like a soft blanket being pulled up, just a little closer. The tower is very quiet now, but it is not empty. It is filled with a deep and profound peace. You can feel the gentle, slow rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet anchor in the stillness of the night. The 137 steps of the winding stair no longer feel like a challenge. They feel like a slow, easy descent down, into a place of deep and comfortable rest. There is no storm on the horizon, there is no brass to be polished, no clockwork to be wound. The only duty now is the gentle duty of sleep. You can feel the last of your thoughts beginning to drift away like small, white-sailed boats heading out into a calm, moonlit sea, disappearing one by one over the edge of the world into the soft, welcoming darkness of your dreams. The light has been kept, and now it is time for the keeper to rest. The final word has been whispered. If your mind is still gently stirring, you're welcome to drift into another of my stories. If not, I wish you a deep and peaceful slumber. Good night.